common saying goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and this is most certainly true. One who drinks from unclean streams may salivate at the thought of the very water someone uses to water their lawn. So too can this be applied to Ulaanbaatar and the cities of the Western world. To the untrained eye, the city is that of smoke, concrete, metal, and frost. But to those that can take pleasure in that which is not perfect, will find the beauty that lies within this great city. In this video, we will discover the city of Ulaanbaatar and how it came to be from a nomadic center of Mongol Buddhism to the thriving heart of present-day Mongolia. But first of all, I implore you to like and subscribe and enjoy the video. The complicated early history of Ulaanbaatar can be traced back to the middle of the 17th century and can be closely linked to the story of a man named Ulaanbaatar and that of Buddhism in Mongolia. Things will get complicated right now, so bear with me. Ulaanbaatar was born under the Tushite Khanate, one of the four Imugs of the Khalkha Khanate that was formed after Chinggis Khan's original empire collapsed. These lands, just a few decades ago, had been heavily converted to the Gelug school of Tibetan Buddhism, the newest and most prominent school of Tibetan Buddhism, and the one in which the Dalai Lama comes from. This was heavily supported by Emperor Kangxi of the Qing dynasty in China. Ulaanbaatar was the son of the Tushite Khan and was said to possess abilities that set him apart from many at a young age. His supreme intelligence and devotion to Buddhism made it so that in 1639 he was designated a supreme religious leader within the Khalkha Khanate. In the next years, Ulaanbaatar ventured across Tibet, learning from many religious leaders, including the Dalai Lama, who declared him a Jebsun Dhamma Kutuktu, or the 16th reincarnation of one of the Buddha's original disciples. He was also declared Bogd Gegin, making him the highest-ranked Lama in all of Mongolia. But how does this relate to the history of Ulaanbaatar? Well, Ulaanbaatar returned to Mongolia to create many centers for Buddhist religion across the land. In the 1650s, he created his Shira Busin or his yellow screen palace, out of an assembly of gers that he had collected along his travels. This nomadic palace would serve as the foundation for what would become present-day Ulaanbaatar. As time went on, the palace formed into a nomadic city of gers, coming to be known as Orgu, or Kuri. The city then consisted of the palace of Ulaanbaatar and several yurts. The city just before the palace was founded somewhere near Lake Shairit Saganur. Then, within the years between 1739 and 1778, the city moved about 24 times. Are you ready? Let's go. First to Kushu Tsaidam in 1640. In 1651, the population of the city was split up into 7 Imugs itself, each being their own distinctive portion of the city, with 4 Imugs being added years later. The city then moved to the Khenti Mountains in 1654. Here, Ribo Gejig Andan Shadublin, or a great assembly hall, was added to the city. On to Agumur in 1688, then to Inner Mongolia in 1690. This move was made to escape the present violence ongoing in Outer Mongolia during this time. Here, Ulaanbaatar called on the Qing Emperor to help the Khalkhas in their feud against the Western Mongolian Khanates, which eventually led to Outer Mongolia entering the suzerainty of the Qing and the establishing of the Kyakhta trade route between Beijing and Russia. Then the city moved to Setzer Legin Erdene Turgoi in 1700, then to Dagandel in 1719, to Usansir in 1720, to Ik Tamir in 1722, to Jargalant in 1723. Around now is when Ulaanbaatar dies, and the next Kutuktu is appointed for Kuri. Between now and 1757, 11 more Imags would be founded here. Now, it moves to Ivangol in 1724, to Kujirt Bulan in 1729, to Burgaltai in 1730, to Sagnagor in 1732, to Turelj in 1733. By now, Urga had become a large center for religion and commercial trade within Mongolia. It then moved to the Uliastai River in 1734, to Kuimandal in 1736, to Kuntsal in 1740, to Udleg in 1742, to Agumur in 1743, to the river Selby in 1747. Around this point, the city gains its first judiciary. Then, it moves again to the Uliastai River in 1756. Here, the Qianlong Emperor, Hongli, 5th Emperor of the Qing dynasty, appointed Khalkha Vice-General Sangzai-dorje as the first Amban of Kuri. Citing the command, the emperor says thus: although the Shanzadwa Sundub Dorji is present in the Kuri for the supervision of the teachings and services, one man is not enough for the administration of all the lower Shabinar. For this reason, it is commanded that the Khalk Tsulkalchi Changshun Sanji Dorji be summoned, and let him, in overseeing the Kuri, administer well as the Kutuktu's Shabinar. To clear it up, Shabinar was the term for the common folk within the region of Mongolia and the Ambans, high priority leaders within the Qing dynasty. The city then moved back to the Selby in 1762, to Kuimandal in 1772, and then to its final location in the spot in which the Selby and Toul rivers converge in 1778. The palace of the Kutuktu itself would be placed in the east area of the city on the bank of the Selby, which became the administrative capital of the city. Then, the western portion became the religious, philosophical, and scholarly side of the city. Now we enter a new era for Kuri. It has finally found a permanent place to settle, and it is a powerful religious and political center throughout Mongolia. Despite this, the city still had much development to be made that would truly turn it into a full center for political activity in Mongolia, and for it to become the thriving metropolis it is today. So begins the formation era of Ulaanbaatar, or Kuri. By now, the Jebsen Dama Kutuktu had long been designated the religious leader of Mongolia, and one heavily influenced by the emperor in China, showing how Kuri had the power to attain the position of the center of Mongolia. Also, we must now mention the many changes that had occurred to Kuri itself during the nomadic years. Many things had been built across the city in the past few years. Under the leadership of the second Kutuktu, a tantric and philosophical assembly, as well as the office of the Shanza, to supervise and administer the ordinary people of the city, were founded. Under the leadership of the third Kutuktu, a monastic medical school was founded, and as mentioned earlier, the Mongol Amban was appointed by the Qing to help lead the city. Then, getting back to the fourth Kutuktu, Lusan Tudin Wanchug Jigmad Jams, we have once again come back to the formation era. This Kutuktu did a lot of work during his leadership. He founded an astrological monastic school. He established Shadublin, just outside the city, as a place for meditation, and he founded a second philosophical school. But most importantly of all, he was there as the Qing dynasty signed a decree in 1786, making the Ambans of Kuri the top civil authority over the lands of Tushit Khan and Setsen Khan. Khalkha Aimogs providing Kuri the power it needed to cement itself as an authoritative center, as well as that of a religious and educational center. The city, in this time, also became a large trading hub for Chinese merchants and wares. With that, we should mention the Kyakta trade, an important part of the history of Kuri and of Mongolia itself. Established in 1727, after the signing of the Treaty of Kyakta, Kyakta was a large trading post that carried large volumes of goods, mainly tea, furs, and silk, from Beijing, that went onwards into Russia. The trade route itself, simply known as the Kyakta route, went from Kyakta onto the Russian and Qing border near Siberia, south to Kuri, and then through the Gobi Desert to Beijing. To the Russians, it was an opportunity to trade furs gathered across Siberia. For the Qing, an opportunity to further protect their possessions across Mongolia. But to the Mongolians in Kuri, this was seen as an opportunity. This trade route brought lots of wealth and trade to Kuri, which helped it grow by a lot through its years, until the closing of the Kyakhta trade in the late 1800s, when railways like the Trans-Siberian and free trade agreements caused Kyakhta to fall into decline. Next came Kutuktu No. 5. This Kutuktu worked to renew the current schools of philosophy in Kuri. 2 large temples and another temple, the famous Gandan Teg Chenling, which still stands in Ulaanbaatar, were built, as well as a new palace. Even more palaces and temples were built under his reign. Along with this, the number of lamas within Kuri rose during his time to around 10,000, and many lived within a new section of the city called Gandan. Then came the 6th and 7th Kutuktu, who died too young to rule. Now, the year is 1911, and we come to an important point in our story. We come upon the 8th Kutuktu, Bogd Khan. Earlier this year, in 1911, the fall of the Qing dynasty occurred, in which the Republic of China revolted against imperial rule and established a republic in its place. This event being known as the Xinhai, or 1911 Revolution. Also brewing, just across the Gobi Desert in Mongolia, was the urge for independence from the Chinese government, which had not done much to support them. This revolution thus made the perfect time for the Mongolians to make their move, and that same year, on December 28, 1911, Bogd Khan declared the independence of Mongolia, only months after assuming the position of Kutuktu. Bogd Khan, though, was not his true name, being an honorific title in comparison to that of a Qing emperor. Bogd Khan created a monarchy made of 5 ministers, and most importantly, designated Kuri as the official capital of Mongolia. Despite all this, Mongolia was still relatively Chinese-controlled, and the Chinese still had troops stationed in the country and wished to control it. Mongolia was then given relative autonomy in 1915, as signed by Mongolia, Russia, and China in the Treaty of Kyakhta, as well as approved by the Khanates to the west. Then came a period of conflict for the city of Kuri. In 1917, the October Revolution in Russia overturned the power of the Tsar and defeated the Russian White Army. But many white armies held out over the next years. In 1919, the Kuomintang, a force for the Republic of China, entered Mongolia and occupied the city of Kuri. The next year, in 1920, a holdout army of the Russian Whites under Baron Ungern von Sterber expelled the Chinese army and liberated Mongolia. By 1921, Kuri was occupied, and many Chinese residents and soldiers were tragically massacred. Ungern then ruled Mongolia under the blessing of the Khan until the Mongols sent to the new Russian Red government to expel the Whites after Ungern began brutally massacring Jews and other Russians within the city. Bogd Khan was stripped of his power and became the spiritual leader of Mongolia, while the People's Government of Mongolia was established, and true Mongolian independence was declared after the invasion of the Reds. The Bogd passed away around then, but left behind a lasting legacy of a flourishing Kuri and Mongolia as a whole. The treasury expanded and temples were built. Now, Kuri enters the modern era of Mongolian history. The communists have taken over, and the city is large and sprawling. In the next part of the video, we will look at how Kuri grew to resemble a true modern city after 1924. In the meantime, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on what you thought about the video. See you in part 2.